What is up, everybody? This is Johnny. You're watching Super Positive Games, and here I am with my top 10 list of 2019. This came out a little bit late because after the new year there were still a game or two that I won't disclose which game, that I wanted to give a shot before I created my list. So I did that, and that's why this video came out a little bit later than it usually does each year. But this is my favorite video to make. I was super excited to make it, and here I am making it now. So obviously, before I get to my top 10 games of the year, there are a couple of things that I want to mention first. They are the worst 3 games, a little shout-out section, and honorable mentions, and then we'll get into the actual list. First off, the worst 3. Now, I know you clicked on the video that said top 10 games of 2019, but I think it's important to highlight the low points of the year. Only 3 of them. These 3 games are, and these are in no particular order, by the way. They're Anthem, Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint, and Jump Force. Yeah, and it's a bummer that the 3 games that I disliked the most are all AAA games that were all somewhat highly anticipated, at least by me. So, kind of a huge bummer. But in terms of Anthem, my beef with Anthem, I didn't get anywhere near the end of it because during the earlier stages of the campaign, it makes you go on a kind of like challenge treasure hunt, like a mandatory one that I don't think you could skip. And it has you do these 3 or 4 different like challenge tomb things, and each challenge tomb has like, I don't know, 3, 4, or 5 different challenges that you have to go and do in the open world online. And some of them are very, very tedious, others aren't, but most of them are. And one of them in particular is to collect or find and open 15 chests in the world, or 15, or I think it was 30 or something like that. I don't remember the exact number, but it was high. And the problem with this is that the chests in that world are super scarce and they're really difficult to find. There's no set locations. I tried looking for like a guide, and you can't skip this mission. I think I did every other challenge for these tomb things, and I got up to this one, and I spent like an hour trying to find chests. I only found like 1 or 2, and it was super disappointing, and I had to complete that challenge to be able to move on in the campaign, a campaign which I was actually kind of starting to enjoy at that point. It was getting better for me. I thought the character development was starting to click, and I got a little bit invested in that. And to have it all fall apart with this dumb, find 30 chests challenge, or you can't move on, was kind of like the worst. I've never seen a game, in my opinion, ruined by one mission. And it's not even like a real mission. It's just a stupid challenge that the game forces you to do. So that was dumb. I think I would have enjoyed Anthem a little bit more had I continued playing it if this challenge thing didn't exist in the game. It should at least be skippable. To my knowledge, it's not. And I just kind of gave up. Like, I didn't want to spend hours trying to find these stupid chests in the open world. I wanted to experience the story. I did really enjoy the gameplay, though. I thought it was very fun, smooth, that flying around, shooting kind of deal. You could stop and float in midair. It was very fun, the gameplay, and the story was getting better in my eyes. But, super disappointing to have it all ruined by one dumb mission. Then there was Tom Clancy's Ghost Recon Breakpoint, which out of these 3 games that are on here, I think this is my least favorite. It's just awful. I hate a lot of things about this game, yet somehow I was able to finish the whole game. I can't tell you why. I don't know why I was motivated to do so. The game is a buggy mess, and it's also riddled with terrible game design choices that have been made, and it's awful. It's awful. The story is like almost mediocre. His story is almost okay, but not quite. And everything, if I were to sit here and list off and talk about each and everything that I hated about this game, it'll take the entire length of this video. So I won't do that. But I just want you to know that Breakpoint was not enjoyable really at all. You know, it had small merits here or there, but as an overall game, yikes. Then there was Jump Force, which I'm not really an anime guy. I decided to jump into this because I thought I saw all these cool iconic characters and they're all playable, and I thought, and I've never played a fighting game, like a 3D fighting game like that before, so I thought I'd give it a try. It looked really cool. But yeah, I was let down by this one too. It looks like it. I mean, it looks like it was made with a budget of $12. And I'm not talking about it like that in terms of the visuals. I'm talking about it like that in terms of, you know, characters have voices in some cutscenes, and then in other parts of the game where you expect to hear their voices, you get a text pop-up bubble instead of voice. So it's super inconsistent like that. The gameplay is very confusing to me. I didn't know what was going on half the time, but it wasn't bad. It was just, I wish I knew what was going on, and I didn't. I didn't finish Jump Force either. I just decided that I didn't want to spend my time on it anymore. I wasn't getting any level of enjoyment out of it. The story wasn't good. Cool concept, but the execution was failed. So that's Jump Force. Though, yeah, so those are my 3 least favorite experiences. Breakpoint being the worst by far, but yet out of these 3 games, that's the one that I finished somehow. Again, I can't explain it to you. That's just what happened. Yeah, so Anthem, Breakpoint, and Jump Force, worst 3. Now it's time for me to move on to a couple shoutouts before I get on to my actual 2 honorable mentions. These shoutouts are Untitled Goose Game, Blasphemous, Wolfenstein Youngblood, and Kingdom Hearts 3. All games that I enjoyed, but didn't go on to do anything in the list or honorable mentions. Just wanted to throw those out there. They are games that are worth your time, I think. Wolfenstein Youngblood being controversial because it's universally disliked, but I disagree. I liked it a lot. Now on to the real honorable mentions. Okay, so these are 2 games that I feel really, really deserved spots on my actual top 10 list, but just fell short. These are in no order. The first one is what you're seeing on screen right now. It's Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Now, when I played this game back in, I think it was November, I thought for sure that it would end up on my top 10 list somewhere, but it did kind of fall short in a few areas. Now, whenever I talk about a Call of Duty game, I always talk about it in terms of the 3 different pieces: the campaign, the multiplayer, and the co-op. Now, the campaign I thought was fantastic. I thought it was a step above, obviously, last year with Black Ops 4 not even bothering with the campaign. But I thought it was the best in recent memory, in the past couple of years as well. I do wish that it was a little bit longer. It clocks in, I think, at around 5 hours, and it took me 2 days to finish because I didn't have like the full days to use to play it. But I think if I started it in like around noon, I'd probably be able to finish it just after dinner time, I'd say. And to me, the length was kind of disappointing. But it was very good. It left me wanting a lot more. I thought the storytelling was fantastic. The cinematics were some of the best I've ever seen. The cutscenes were gorgeous. I do wish that the game let you play as Captain Price, though. That was a major letdown. I mean, how can you have a reboot of a franchise and not even let the player play as the most iconic face of the whole, series and franchise? But, nonetheless, it was still very, very good. There were a lot of viscerally shocking moments, which I think were done tastefully and effectively. You know, there was one moment in particular, I won't say, that, or very early on in the game, I think people who have played it will know what I'm talking about, where I was just sitting there like shocked as I was just moving through the game world. I couldn't believe what was happening around me. It was frightening. And I think this game, with those moments, and there are a few of them in here, made this one, took the series in a direction that I'm very excited for in terms of the storytelling and the campaign. I think that this one kind of broke new ground in that front, and I'm very excited for the future. This is a fantastic foundation for what's coming next, and I hope what's coming next is even better than this, and hopefully a little bit longer in terms of length of the campaign. Then there's the multiplayer, which has its normal suite of basic modes, you know, team deathmatch, kill confirmed, domination, all that jazz. But there were 2 additional game modes that were brought to the table. They are Gunfight and Ground War. Now, Ground War let me down quite a bit. It was a shot at Battlefield's kind of, you know, huge team-based battle, you know, with vehicles and, you know, 30 versus 30. I don't know what the exact number is because I barely played the mode because I didn't like it. But it's like, you know, 30 v 30 or 60 v 60, whatever it is, with huge maps and vehicles and all that. And I thought it underwhelmed me. I only played like 2 matches. I thought the maps weren't interesting at all. They were just generic. Here's like a little city, and here's like a little train yard, just generic places that I've seen millions of times in first-person shooters like these. I wished for a little bit more originality in that regard. And I thought it was just Call of Duty, but bigger. It didn't feel like I was part of this huge effort, you know, that really like made me love Battlefield 1 or other Battlefield games. I didn't feel that large scale effort in Ground War, and I thought it just didn't do anything for me at all. Kind of disappointed by it. In terms of Gunfight, the other mode, much smaller scale, 2v2, where everybody gets the exact same loadout each round, and it's 2v2, no respawn. It's like match based, like, okay, you start off and then last man standing, that team wins. And everybody, the cool thing about it is everybody gets the exact same loadout, and I thought that mode was way better than Ground War, and frankly better than the other modes in the game, the other multiplayer modes in the game as well. I think Gunfight is my favorite mode in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Favorite multiplayer mode, I mean. Campaign doesn't even touch, obviously. I mean, they're apples to oranges. I kind of got a little addicted to Gunfight. The maps are super creative, and they're laid out. Some are symmetrical, some are not. You know, it allows for a little bit of strategy going on, you know. Which route are you going to take? Are you going to try and flank around? Are you going to go straight up through the middle? Yeah, I found myself planning out round to round what I'm going to do based on what map I'm playing on. And they're all unique maps. They're all fun to play on, fun to learn, and very quick to learn because they're tiny, because it's a 2v2 thing. And I'm just grateful that they made a separate batch of maps for this mode rather than throwing 4 people into a standard size map. You know, they actually took the time to plan it out. You know, they put care into it. They put thought into it. And it made the mode really, really fun. Gunfight is my favorite part of this year's the Call of Duty Modern Warfare multiplayer package. I will say that the other type of gunfight mode where you have, I forgot what it's called, I think it's OSP, where you everybody starts out unarmed and you have to go and pick up the different weapons that are on the map, and they change each time, and you have to go pick up weapons and pick up a grenade and and stuff like that. I thought that sucked because I thought the whole purpose of gunfight is that everybody has the exact same weapons in their hands at the same time. And that mode just completely contradicted that, because one side of the map would have, so let's say, an LMG, the other side would have pistols. It's all unbalanced, and I thought that I think it's called OSP version of gunfight doesn't even compare at all to the original OG gunfight that I enjoyed so much, and I am still enjoying now. It's a mode that I keep going back to time and time again. It's just so fun. But in terms of ground war, disappointing. Gunfight, fantastic. The regular multiplayer suite of modes, great too. I love gunfight. I mean, not gunfight. Gun game. They're a little confusing with all these G, ground, gun, game, all this. But yeah, pretty solid multiplayer in Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And then there's the co-op side of things. This is the first year in a while, I think since 2013 with Call of Duty. I don't know. But the first time in a long time that a Call of Duty game did not have zombies in it. Instead, it had something else. So no zombies this year. Instead, it's Spec Ops, which is a kind of co-op. I think it's four-player co-op, mission-based kind of thing. Spec Ops I did not like really at all, mainly because of its extreme difficulty. It is very difficult. Enemies spawning everywhere, in front of you, behind you, to your left, to your right, in the sky, underneath you. It was just chaos. Even on the easier difficulties, even with 4 people, it's just ridiculously hard, to the point where I just didn't enjoy it. And that's not good. And I also think the map design was just, like Ground War, super just generic. It reminded me of, the Minecraft mode where instead of having biomes, it's just one flat piece of green for, infinity. It reminded me of that, with these just generic building structures on there thrown about. It just nothing about it. Nothing about the map design felt special to me at all. It just felt like blah. Just like, whatever. Here's a couple of buildings, go fight in it forever because the enemies won't stop respawning. So that's Spec Ops. I didn't like it. I thought it was nice to get a break from zombies. Not that I didn't need one, but it was nice to have something else to play in its place for the co-op slot of Modern Warfare in 2019. But playing Spec Ops, I wish we had a zombies mode, to be honest, or something completely new. I'd welcome something like Extinction. That's not zombies, but still very good. But I appreciated the need to move away from zombies in Modern Warfare. I mean, it's no Modern Warfare game has zombies. It's all been Spec Ops forever, for the whole history of Modern Warfare. So makes sense that it would be Spec Ops again. But just didn't like it. So I played maybe 2 or 3, or I didn't play. I attempted 2 or 3 matches of Spec Ops. Didn't go well. Died every time. Never touched it again. To me, this Call of Duty Modern Warfare has 2 modes, campaign and multiplayer. And they're both very good. Campaign, I think, a little bit better than the multiplayer. Actually, a lot better. I love the campaign. So, I mean, overall, well done by Infinity Ward. In terms of the campaign, fantastic and a great starting point. I really can't wait to see what comes next out of this series and the franchise. Great multiplayer. Spec Ops, very, very underwhelming. Not enjoyable for me at all. But yeah, that's Call of Duty Modern Warfare. Again, when I played it, I thought that it would definitely make it on the list somewhere because of the campaign. But here we are in the honorable mention. Speaking of, it's time to talk about my other honorable mention, which is Metro Exodus. This is a game that made me play, I think, this year I finished 2033 Redux back in the summer, and I also played all of Last Light to to catch up to Metro this year. I know it came out in February, but I waited until December. And I gotta say, Metro Exodus is my favorite Metro game out of those three. Thought Last Light was fantastic, better than 2033. But Exodus just performed on another level, I think. In terms of a narrative standpoint, it brought to the table a lot of lovable characters, and to see them go through all of that turmoil and chaos was I can't describe it, actually. I don't know. But it wasn't good. I don't know how to explain that. But just the narrative was fantastic. This Metro entry took a different approach. Usually the Metro games are linear games from start to finish. That's what the first two were. Metro Exodus took a different approach where two or you could argue three of the levels are open area. And what I mean by that, they're not open world. They are areas that are open, not that big of areas, but they're open to explore with different like side things that you could do, side locations. I gotta say, I didn't like it. I adored that linearity from the first two games, and the game actually starts off with a linear level, which I enjoyed. I was like, this is getting off to a great start, and then it brought you to the first open area, which was the Volga. It's like the snowy one. It gives you objectives to go to in that area that advance the story, but it also gives you a ton of side locations to go to that give you collectibles. They give you some extra supplies, maybe a character to talk to. And Metro Exodus is very much a survival game with very limited resources. Making the commitment to go to all of these locations is very strenuous on those resources, even if it gives you some extra bullets or materials for crafting. Crafting, by the way, I love the crafting system in this game. Fantastic crafting system. It all made sense. The menu was great. All around great crafting. But again, in terms of the exploration aspect of the open areas, I just wasn't feeling it. I wanted to stay on the story mission. And, you do have the option to just go straight to the story objectives. But, I'm the kind of person that's very thorough in the games that I play. I like to see everything in an area. I like to try and collect everything. So it was I couldn't make the decision to just go, golden path, only the story missions, just beeline for those big mission objectives. I couldn't pass up all of this side stuff to do. And, I decided to go and try and do all of it. And it took a very long time. And none of it really is interesting other than just collecting a note here and there. It's more there are enemies at these locations to fight, but it's just they weren't interesting. And they took resources to get to, and getting around some of these areas is kind of difficult, especially in the Volga, where you have to use this dumb rowboat for part of it. A lot of it has like a water that you have to traverse. You can't swim, obviously, in Metro, so you have to use this dumb rowboat where the creatures climb on it and attack you. The thing about this rowboat is every time a creature climbs up on it to attack you, it takes you out of the rowing sequence and puts the gun in your hand, and you have to shoot them off the boat, wasting ammo, and then you have to hold X again to get back into the rowing sequence and keep rowing. And they're just relentless. They jump up every 5 seconds, and it's just annoying, Just like traversing some of these areas are just very tedious and time consuming and resource consuming, and they didn't really yield any interesting results other than some extra supplies and ammo or a collectible or a character to talk to. I just didn't like it. I far more preferred the linear levels, and there are a handful sprinkled throughout. I think like 3 or 4 maybe, and those are done really, really well. But I mean, in terms of the openness that it introduced to the series, I wasn't a huge fan. There was the third and last open area was the more interesting, one because it was pretty linear along the way, but it still had these open areas. But like there's the desert one and then the snow one that were gruelingly tedious to get around. And that left a kind of sour taste in my mouth. But overall, for the rest of the game, the story was fantastic, and I loved the idea of living on a train that keeps expanding and growing, in compartments and cars. I love that on the road aspect to it, because Metro used to be all about crawling through the metro tunnels, fighting these metro creatures, and in subway cars and underground like areas. Now they're out and about. They're out in the real world, the overworld, and they're discovering new things about it, and they're running away from the metro. Yet, I won't spoil it, but yeah, it's just the story was great. And for me, the reason why I think if this whole game was linear, it would have ended up on the list, but I just couldn't put it on there because I just didn't enjoy the open areas as much as I wanted to. So that's Metro Exodus. Devastating story, pretty good, gunplay, great crafting, and beautiful game. Like, these open areas, while they're not fun to get around, in my opinion, they are beautiful to look at. The snowy one, the desert one, I don't like deserts as much, but still pretty. And then all the other levels are beautiful. And I just love that point to point they're going along this path and they're meeting new groups of people, and it's just a fascinating story to me, and I love that about it. And that's why it's an honorable mention, but just not there. Not to me, not good enough to make it on the real list with all these other great games that I'm about to talk about. Speaking of, why don't I just get to it and start talking about it? So, number 10. For number 10, I have Control. Control was obviously a Game of the Year contender, and a lot of outlets gave it their Game of the Year, and a lot of people, it was in a lot of people's, just like around Twitter and everything, I saw it on a lot of people's like high up, like top 5, top 3 of the year, whatever. I thought that it was good enough to make my list, but at number 10. For me, Control was overall very enjoyable. The main reason that I have it so low here is my main problem with it is the storytelling and the character development. I think that the overall themes of the board and the astral plane and all this supernatural, like cosmic, all these ideas about all that stuff was absolutely fascinating to me. Fascinating. And along with the fantastic art direction and the fantastic lighting like, oh my god. And I'll get to that later, because that was fantastic. That's probably, all that stuff is probably the main reason why it's on this list. But I just think the plot and how the storytelling moved throughout the game just didn't suffice. It just didn't leave me fulfilled from a storytelling perspective. I just thought the story was kind of okay. I thought the character of Jessie Faden was fantastic, but the supporting characters around her just didn't really do much for me. They all sat in the same place the whole time. None of them really did anything interesting. I thought that was the main problem in my eyes with Control. But let me talk about the good stuff. First of all, probably my favorite thing about this game is the lighting and the art design. Some of those areas with those intense red hues and the angelic whites, it's fantastic. The lighting, the art design, the architecture, and the lighting put together is just unique and kind of scary at the same time. I don't know. I just can't explain it. So why am I even going to try to explain it? But the action gameplay is fantastic, I think. The service weapon was fun to use in all its different forms. I loved eventually getting the ability to float and levitate. I thought that was like my favorite part of the gameplay. Yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to say about Control. It was overall enjoyable. The action, combat, the gameplay, and all that was fun. I don't think it ever got boring or tedious. It almost did, but not quite. There are these things, I forgot what they're called, where you have like your basic missions, and then there are some side missions as well. But then there are these things that pop up, like these emergency things that it tells you to go to a certain area and go kill a particular type of enemy, and it's only for a limited time. It has like a countdown timer on it, and I forgot what they're called, but whatever they are, I feel like they were super unnecessary. It kind of made it feel a little bit like Destiny in a way, and I didn't want that. Absolutely not. There were some moments that were like that had me like super like wow moments. The ashtray maze is one of them, and I thought that the ending was very underwhelming. First of all, I didn't know what the hell was going on. There was this giant machine thing in a huge room. Maybe it was because of the plot that wasn't really pulling at me or anything, but I just didn't really, the ending didn't really hit me at all. It didn't, just the overall story kind of, I don't want to use this word, but this term kind of fell flat in my eyes. The reason why it's on this list is the gameplay and the art direction. And that includes the lighting and the architecture and all that. So that's Control. I don't really know how to, I don't really have anything else to say about it. So, why don't I just move on to number 9 already, which is A Plague Tale: Innocence. Plague Tale: Innocence is a linear game. It's one of the only linear games on this list, and I love it for it. It's got great storytelling, great characters, and fantastic gameplay. I describe the gameplay in 2 parts. I describe it in terms of the rat puzzles, and I describe it in terms of the stealth aspect, like kind of the combat with the enemies. And early on, it starts off with sections of either the stealth or the rat puzzles. And about midway through the game, I was wondering, what if the rat puzzles would combine with the stealth and dealing with the enemies? And that's exactly what happened. Right after I thought of that, it happened in the game. So, I was having fun enjoying the rat puzzles and the stealth, which the stealth isn't really like that. It's not like Assassin's Creed or anything, but, it's good. It's a linear stealth. You just go through. There's usually 1 or 2 ways, 3 ways to get around a given enemy, and you just go and move on to the next one, and that's okay. I enjoyed that. But when the game brought those 2 things together, and you had to get around enemies while dealing with the hordes of rats, with playing with the different lamps and torches and all that, that's when the gameplay really hit a level of wow for me. Like, that's when things really started clicking. The story was clicking from minute 1, but once those 2 gameplay ideas married, and things started getting more intense in the story, and I just loved it. The music is fantastic, and the music while you're playing the game is outstanding. And I didn't realize that until recently when I was rewatching some gameplay of it, and I just didn't realize while I was playing it that the music is so great, and it highlights certain moments in the gameplay so perfectly. So yeah, fantastic gameplay with the Plague Tale: Innocence. It was a while ago that I played it, so I'm having trouble remembering a lot about it, but I will say, like, the characters and the story were very, very good, and that boss fight at the end was spectacular. Thinking back from that moment back to where you started off in this story was surreal, because you come such a long way as a set of characters. You start off with nothing, like literally nothing, and then you come to that point where you've grown the capability to do that at the end was fantastic. I'm a huge fan of linear games, and I feel like companies and fans of video games all together just are forgetting about the linear game. Almost every game today is an open world game, and it's upsetting to, especially if you see a game or series that was linear, like Metro, try something like an open world game, or just straight up become an open world game in a sequel, and see it like underperform like that is just kind of disappointing. And I feel like the linear experience is going way underappreciated these days, and I think A Plague Tale: Innocence combats that in a fantastic way. It's a great single player linear story game with fantastic gameplay, 2 gameplay elements that marry halfway through to create some of the best gameplay of the year, I think. So that's A Plague Tale: Innocence. Fantastic game. We totally recommend it. In fact, I recommend pretty much every game on this list except for the worst 3. But, Plague Tale: Innocence, fantastic. Let me move on to number 8. That's going to be The Outer Worlds. Now, I'm not usually an RPG guy, despite the fact that my favorite game ever is an RPG, Fallout 3. RPG isn't a genre that I play all the time. But I played The Outer Worlds this year, and I really liked it. I liked it a lot. I didn't love it. I didn't love it as much as I really wanted to, but I liked it a lot. The reason why I didn't love it is the combat felt a little bit stiff. The gunplay just wasn't at a level that I expected. In a world where there are games like Destiny 2, Apex Legends, Call of Duty with all this fantastic gunplay, The Outer Worlds disappointed in that regard compared to those. But I'm willing to understand that The Outer Worlds is an RPG first and a shooter second. I came to terms with that really quickly, because the dialogue options, the characters in this game, and the conversations that you have are fantastic. I never, when you're like bored in a game, and like a game, and you just like flip through the dialogue without even caring, you just whatever, you just mash through it. I never did that with The Outer Worlds, ever. I cared about every conversation I had because the writing was spectacular. And it's because of that I didn't really care so much about the game, the gunplay that was kind of stiff. I think I spent more time in conversations in The Outer Worlds than I did in combat. And that's very important, because if it was the other way around, I don't think I would have liked The Outer Worlds as much. Because the conversations and the dialogue and the writing and all of that really made me like this game. I almost said love, but the overall story arc I think is fantastic. The idea of this derelict ship that's been abandoned for years, all of a sudden becoming relevant again in this world of corporate greed and stuff, was fantastic. And I loved all of the areas, all of the explorable open areas, Stellar Bay. I loved Monarch, Terra 2. I loved exploring in this game. But I will say, in the cities, it does feel like a little hollow. Like, just the design of the buildings, the overall just architecture design of some of these towns and cities kind of feels a little bit hollow. But I'm okay with it, because the characters that live in them that you get to talk to make up for it tenfold. And I begin to forget about, these little imperfections that I see. The companions in this game are really, really well done. And Parvati is by far probably my favorite character in the entire game, is Parvati. I couldn't get enough. She comes on she joins your crew very early on, and I found her to be the most interesting companion aboard the ship. You know, every time I talked to her, every time we had a conversation, I found it to be the most interesting thing, because she had the most interesting things to say about everything, and she comes from a place, you know, seeing her come from the place where you meet her to, you know, the journeys that you bring her on, and seeing her like in these new elements that she's not used to, unlike the rest of the crew, are, you know, awesome. Seeing her react to different new things, you know, and all of her side missions were insanely interesting. And I can't say that about the other companions on your ship. So Parvati, my favorite character in the game. Fantastic. And that's just a testament to the great writing in the game. You know, the dialogue and everything. I loved putting points into my attributes every 2 levels. You know, I liked upgrading my gear. And just the story was, you know, fantastic. And the design of the world was really cool. I loved walking out of like a building and looking up and seeing an entire planet in the entire, like, it took up, I think it's in Stellar Bay, where you could see like this ginormous Jupiter-like planet in the sky, and it takes up like 80% of the entire sky. That was beautiful. I loved all that stuff where you could just see like planets that are just huge in the sky. You know, I have dreams about that stuff. And just seeing it in this game, you know, kind of being immersed in that was kind of mind-blowing. And there's another game on this list that has something like that, a similar name. You might be able to guess what it is, but The Outer Worlds as number 8, just really, really, really good writing. Made up for the kind of below par combat system. And then there's the consumables, which I forgot to talk about. But really quick, the consumables, like Kingdom Hearts 3 this year, which I shouted out earlier, the consumables in this game I didn't really care for. But I appreciate them in how they somewhat contributed to the world building a little bit. You know, with all the different brands and the slogans and all that. But I just didn't feel the need to use the consumables a lot of the time. Like, at all. I just didn't see them as useful. A lot of the time, I just didn't even bother to use them ever. I used them like once or twice, didn't really care. Same thing goes for Kingdom Hearts 3, which has like a million consumable systems in the game that I just didn't even bother touching. But that's Kingdom Hearts 3. This is the top 10 list. 2 different things. Yeah, The Outer Worlds is fantastic. I don't think it is on the level of Fallout, in my opinion. I know it gets compared to Fallout on the daily, because it is, you know, obviously from the original creators of Fallout. I just don't think it's on the same level as Fallout 3 or New Vegas. Those games have a special place in my heart. But I'm very excited to see what Obsidian Entertainment does next. You know, whether an Outer Worlds 2 or, you know, a different IP. Whatever it's going to be, I know that the writing and the dialogue and the conversations are going to be outstanding, as they were in the Outer Worlds. Let's move on to number 7, a game that a lot of people are not expecting. I think I'm one of the very few in the world that has this game on their top 10 list of 2019. Number 7 is The Sinking City. So The Sinking City is about a city that is sinking. But The Sinking City's atmosphere really drew me in, and that's probably one of the main reasons why it is on this list, and it's as high up on this list as it is above the previous games that I just talked about. It's a detective game where you are finding clues and you're finding locations to go to, and the way you explore the world organically is really what drew me into this game. You go, let's say you get a clue and it has an address on it. You would open up, read, it gives you, okay, I'm going to try to explain this as efficiently as possible. The map has different like street names. Every street is named. this, something or other street or some whatever way. Every street has a name to it and a unique name. They're not. And when you get the clues, it'll give you 2 streets and it'll tell you to go to the corner or where the 2 streets meet. And you have to open the map, find the area that the clue is talking about, find the 2 streets by their names, and put the marker on the map yourself. And then you have to go there by walking, or some of the streets are flooded, so you have to use this little boat for a little while. And getting around that way was immensely satisfying. I loved getting a new clue, and I loved opening the map to pinpoint where I need to go next, to find those 2 streets in that area and go to it. I loved the design of each area. Each district in the world has its unique look. There's like the richer district, there's the rundown district, the docks, the university kind of district. It's all different and it's all fresh. The whole city doesn't look exactly the same. There are these different types of metropolitan biomes, I guess. And the characters are interesting. Your character, Charles Reed, while he's not the most energetic video game character ever, he has an interesting story, and he is interesting in how he interacts with people and how he thinks. The combat in the Sinking City is, might I dare say, the worst on this list. I might even call it trash. I don't want to use that word because I love this game, but I don't love this game because of the combat. It's really bad. It's very stiff. You don't get a lot of ammo. It's kind of like a survival-ish kind of deal going on where you have to kind of craft some ammo. You find some ammo occasionally. Kind of like Resident Evil. We'll get to that later. But here, the combat is not the focus of this game. It's the detective work. And I loved going into the Mind Palace where it shows like all the clues that you found and you have to connect the dots and make these deductions about what you experienced. I loved that. It made me interested in like detective work and investigation work. And there is another game on this list later on that does that, but we'll get to that later. But yeah, the Sinking City, the atmosphere, the gloomy kind of rainy, like droopy atmosphere was outstanding. I just loved being in Oakmont. Didn't love, combat, but the detective gameplay just kept me hooked. I whenever I wasn't playing this game, I was just like, I really want to play the Sinking City. I was always excited to get back to it because of the detective stuff and finding clues and using the map. I will say the NPCs in the open world kind of act very weird. First of all, there are sometimes too many of them. They do the thing where there's like 8, 9, or 10 of them just standing very, very close to each other, kind of walking around but bumping into each other. Weird stuff goes on with those NPCs. I'll leave it at that. Some issues there. But a lot of the interior designs of the apartment buildings and all this, the interiors that you get to explore are all very similar. They're obviously have similar templates to use, and you notice it. But I wasn't bothered by that at all, because in each of these different apartments and interior locations that you get to explore and visit, you find something else about it's not about what the interiors look like and how they look the same and they use the same template. It's about what you find in there, the clues that you find, the story bits that you get about the characters that you're talking about in each case. That's what it's all about, and that's why I love the game. But yeah, The Sinking City is the most underrated game on this list by a mile. By a mile. So I totally recommend The Sinking City, especially if you love detective stuff, or even if you love Lovecraftian stuff, or sea horror, if you could call it that. Yeah, just a great game all around. Well, not all. I don't want to say all around. It's not. And another thing I loved about it is the archive system. So there are a handful, I think 6 or 7 dedicated locations on the map where it's like a hospital, a library, the police station, where you go to these locations and you kind of use the system, the archive system, to put 2 and 2 together and find a new clue to go to. That's just another part of the detective system that I loved. I loved having to make the journey over to these archive systems because I have a clue about. So, for example, let's say I find out that a character had to be hospitalized, and a character that I need to talk to had to be hospitalized. I would have to go to the hospital, use the archive system, and find out who they are, why they were hospitalized, and where they lived. So then I could go to their apartment and, explore all that, get those clues, and I could kind of track them down in that way, talking to a bunch of people along the way. That's just a little bit of how the system worked out a lot of the time, and every time it was just so much fun. There are underwater sections where a few of them, they're very sparse. They don't take long. They take like less than 5 minutes. But you dive underneath the surface and you explore the ocean floor. And I didn't like these areas. I didn't like these sections. There usually exist to get to an underwater like cave that you could walk around in. But you suit up in this clunky, heavy suit that you trudge around in, and you get this harpoon gun that doesn't work, and you get attacked by these things that you can't really do anything about because the harpoon gun sucks, and you have to just run away and run to the cave where you could, you get a loading screen, and then you could walk around in that little cave area where there's more clues and more interesting people to talk to, if you could call them people most of the time. I just wasn't a whole fan of that diving mechanic. But again, like overall, like I keep saying, I love the Sinking City for the detective investigation systems, and the atmosphere that it presented was just outstanding. So let me move on to number 6. Number 6 is Apex Legends. Throughout the year, I expected Apex Legends to be way up higher on the list, but it lands here at number 6. Apex Legends never gets old for me. As you may know by now, it's a multiplayer battle royale game. 3 teams of 3, or 20 teams of 3 drop into the world, and they find, so it's battle royale. But this, I can't describe why I like this game so much. It's earned the right to become one of my most beloved multiplayer games of all time. It's up there with Overwatch. It's up there with Rainbow Six Siege and Black Ops 2 and Battlefield 1. It's become part of that exclusive multiplayer club. I just couldn't get enough of it. I love the characters. You're so unique, kind of like Overwatch. They're so unique. My favorite is probably Wraith because she looks so awesome. I also love Mirage. Who doesn't love Mirage? But, I love each and every one of these characters. I think they did a really good job. I was skeptical about them. Like the first 2 or 3 days that the game was out, I was like, I don't know if this kind of character personality thing is going to go over well with Apex. But it turned out to be fantastic in the long run, getting to know these characters as you play them. And I just couldn't get enough of the game. It's so addicting. I love the ping system. I love, being able to communicate while not actually having to use words is fantastic, because I don't love talking to people on the microphone. So gladly you don't have to be effective in Apex. I love the fact that it kind of optimizes your attachments on the fly without you having to go into the menu a lot of the time. I remember playing PUBG, and one of the reasons why I didn't like PUBG really much is because of that clunky ass menu system. That was all. I realized it was a PC game first, but I played it on Xbox, and the menus are a nightmare to navigate. That's not the case with Apex Legends, and a lot of the time, you don't even have to open up the menu to get what you want. The attachment replaces, it does these things automatically on the fly, so you don't have to sit there in the menu, doing all this stuff. And I love being able to respawn your teammates, because it adds a level of intensity, I think. When you die, you're not out, and especially when you see your teammate pick up your banner, you're paying attention, because like you're watching to see if they could get to that respawn beacon and bring you back in. And a lot of the times, or I shouldn't say that, but sometimes they do, and you get a fresh start. But you have to find your weapons again or find new ones. I love the weapons. The gunplay is fantastic. I love the different classes of weapons, the snipers, assault rifles. I found that when I have a pair of weapons that I've kitted out in a game, let's say I have a G7 Scout and a Wingman, or let's say a Prowler. I never really chose to pick up different weapons. Once I had my two, I was set a lot of the time. From this list, it's the most basic game, but in a very, very good way, Yeah, Apex Legends definitely deserved to be on this list somewhere. I think the 6th spot was, the best spot for it, judging by everything else on the list. But, I mean, what else is there to say about Apex? It's fantastic, and I never got bored of it, ever. There were stretches of time where I'd play Apex Legends a little bit for like every night. I'd play it. I'd play a couple matches a night, and I would never ever get tired of it, ever, because I was so addicted to building my arsenal, getting those attachments, and then executing in firefights. And I think out of the battle royales that I've played, this is the most winnable, and it's because of that this is my favorite battle royale ever, because it's so winnable and you have those teammates to back you up. The name of the game in Apex is to be very, very aggressive, and I find that in solo battle royales it's very difficult to do that because you're all alone. But in Apex, I find myself being a lot more aggressive because I have my teammates to back me up. So like I wouldn't say I'm more careless, but like I'm way more over the top aggressive in Apex because I have those teammates there behind me that have my back. I loved using every character's unique abilities and their ultimate abilities. I wouldn't say there's a super strategic approach to this game because it is an open world-ish kind of thing. Just using those abilities using those abilities at strategic times was the strategy. It's not so much flanking or finding different lines on enemy teams. It's more of when should I pop my bubble shield? When should I do my zip line? It's timing is the name of the game in Apex, not so much position or location, in my experience. But that's Apex Legends. It's number 6. Let's move on to number 5, which is Gears 5. So Gears 5 was fantastic. A huge, huge step up from Gears of War 4 back in 2016. Gears of War 4 was a massive disappointment. Gears 5 took it back, and the series is on the up again. Gears 5 was way better than Gears 4 in pretty much every way imaginable. Gears 5's campaign is fantastic. It's one of the best stories of the year. The characters, the stakes. Gears, like Metro earlier, tried this new approach to some of its chapters where it gives you an open area to explore with the skiff, which is actually really, really fun to control, and you could put weapons on it, so it acts like a mobile home, I guess, in a way. But yeah, exploring the open areas. Going into Gears 5 knowing that there are open areas, I was kind of hesitant. I didn't expect it to turn out well, in my opinion. But the open areas didn't give you an overwhelming amount of things to do at all. There were just like a handful of things, and they were all on the way to the main objective. I rarely ever had to go out of my way to go do one of these side missions, and they didn't take very long either. There were some enemies to fight, and you get an upgrade at the end for Jack, or I think some other upgrades too. And it was just fun to do. It was just on the way to the main objective. Oh, I'll stop here for a couple of minutes, do that, do this, and then I'm on my way. It wasn't, it wasn't taxing to do all the side stuff like it was in Metro. Beautiful, beautiful game, fantastic story, and the Gears gameplay didn't really get old. I was expecting to be a little tired of the cover-based action shooting that Gears is known for, but I really wasn't. I was enjoying it because it felt good to play. Gears 5's cover-based shooting is perfect. It's perfect. There's no flaw with it, ever. Maybe there used to be in some previous installments, but in Gears 5, they've mastered it. And so I never really got bored of that. Also because the story was keeping me invested in the gameplay. The story is that good. Kate and Dell's journey didn't last too long because that, it was only for really one chapter. But, then the other characters come back into play, and just the dynamic between all these characters was awesome to see. See how they interacted with each other, and how they interacted with each other in terms of the grand scheme of the story. There were some great set pieces. There's one moment in that red desert. I forgot what it's called, that location, but it's that red desert. It's the third chapter. It's the second open area after the snow one, where you have to catch up with this train that you released. And on the way, a giant storm breaks out, where there's lightning and I think there's tornadoes and red sand is flying everywhere, and it's just chaos, and you have to drive the skiff and try and catch up to a train on time. And just the banter between the characters, not only in that moment but in the entire game as you're playing and exploring, is fantastic. The writing is great. That writing between these characters also bolsters their relationships with each other and their dynamics. So, great storytelling in that regard. Overall, probably it's up. Gears of War 2 was my favorite Gears of War campaign. Gears 5 is my second favorite. This was up there, and it can pretty much go toe to toe with Gears 2. I think, I think they're both my favorite. I don't know which one to pick. They're both fantastic. But then there's the multiplayer, which is fantastic. There are 3 modes. There's Versus, Horde, and Escape. And all 3 are very, very good. I loved Versus. I love Gears multiplayer like that. Sliding around, hitting the walls, using the Gnasher and all that. It's intense. And I love the different variety of game modes that it offers. And then there's Horde mode, which I liked. I didn't play much of it in Gears 4, but here I played a lot more of it. And I will say I wish that there are some stakes, because the only thing you're protecting in Horde mode is your life. I wish that the Fabricator, or I wish there was some kind of thing that you have to defend in the world, whether it be the Fabricator or some other statue or object that has health to it that enemies can damage it, and if it dies or if it gets destroyed, then it's game over. Because a lot of the time my teammates were going out into the world, willy-nilly. They weren't staying with the Fabricator, and I found that the rare occasions where my team did build up a fort around the Fabricator and stayed there each round was the most fun, because it had okay, let me fix this between rounds. Let me fix the barbed wire, the turret. Let me put another turret over here. And when we defended an area, it was way more fun than just going out and about doing whatever. So I think that there needs to be more of an incentive to stay with the Fabricator and protect it. Because that's where I think the gameplay in Horde is most fun, when you're protecting an area rather than just yourselves all alone on the other side of the map. So that's my 2 cents on Horde. Overall enjoyable. I loved playing as Jack in Horde. That was a fun new twist, just being kind of the manager, just fixing everybody up, grabbing people's weapons for them, just being that kind of, I don't know how to explain it, that role is just super fun as Jack. But yeah, Horde was great. And then Escape mode I didn't love as much. I don't know why, it just didn't really click with me. I mean, it started to grow on me a little bit, but it was just whatever. It was just get from A to B alive. That was basically it. There wasn't a story to it or anything. It was just that. Get from A to B. But it was all right. It wasn't the worst. It wasn't bad. Escape isn't a bad mode by any means. It just doesn't really stand out in the, next to Horde and Versus, which I enjoyed a lot. So that's my 2 cents on Gears 5's multiplayer. The campaign is fantastic. Some of the best Gears storytelling I've ever seen. With fantastic characters, character development. It's all there. Gears 5 is such a complete package. It's fantastic. If you like Gears, you need to play Gears 5 because this is, I don't know if this is the best Gears ever. It could be. I don't know. I still really, really loved Gears 2's campaign, but Gears 5, one of the best games of the year. Number 5. Let me move on to number 4 now. That's going to be Return of the Obra Dinn. Now, I know what you're saying. Wait, Return of the Obra Dinn came out in 2018. It did, but it was only on PC. It came to consoles, which is what I played it on in 2019, October, I think, to be exact. Therefore, I deem it eligible for the list, and it made the list big time. Number 4. The most unique art style out of this entire list, I will say. Fantastic art style. But that's not the only reason why I loved it. I talked about the detective work and investigating in the Stinking City earlier. Return of the Obra Dinn does that extremely well. To the point where every time I loaded up this game, I was jumping with joy. I was so excited to get back into it. So excited. The game challenged. It's very difficult game. It challenges you to study environments, to study the scenes. It's just wow. It challenges you so hard, and then when you get things right, you feel like an absolute genius. It's insane. The overall story just isn't there, but it's the process of figuring things out and having these light bulb moments that just really, really make this game one of my favorites ever. I will say when you first start the game, learning how to play the game is very difficult because it tries to tell you how it works, but I just really didn't catch on immediately, so I was kind of lost. I was like, it kept taking me in and out of scenes. It made me walk through these doors that I didn't want to walk through yet. It was kind of confusing. It gave me this book with these lists and these diagrams that I just didn't know what to do with. But as I kept playing and as I kept figuring things out, I figured out how to play this game, and from there on, it was just like such an incredible experience. Filling out that book is so satisfying, and so let me explain a little bit about how the game works in the most basic way. It gives you this book, and it tells you there are 60 crew members on this ship. There were 60. And your job is to figure out who they were, how they died, and who killed them. And it gives you this list, the crew list, and you have to put the names and the occupations and where they came from to the faces. And you have to connect the dots in that way, and you have to enter you have to kind of guess. There's a lot of guessing in this game, but a lot of very educated, strong guessing. So you have to put in a person's name, how they died, and who killed them, if somebody killed them, based on the scenes that the game shows you with them in it and these other characters in it. And you have to figure out, okay, do that. And then the game verifies your investigations in sets of 3. So let's say you have somebody and you figured out everything about them. You're positive this person is this guy and they were killed this way by this person. You won't get it right. The game won't tell you that's correct immediately until 2 other things are correct. So you could have this one character figured out forever, and then eventually, randomly, along with another set of characters, it'll just pop. And knowing that you got that right all this time is super satisfying. I loved going back into each scene, scratching my head, looking around at all the meticulous details, from cot numbers to, who left this plate on the counter and where did the spike go from this sea monster or whatever. It was just all such a joy to do, even though it was very, very hard. It was just insanely satisfying. Such a great experience. I recommend. I don't know. It's hard to recommend this game because a lot of people, I feel, would be turned off immediately from the jump because the systems are so difficult to figure out in the first place. And then once you figure that out, then the game figuring out all the characters and everything is also really difficult. But the payoff is great. I do think the overall story of what happened to the Obra Dinn and how it happened and which characters were involved and who was, who had bad intentions. I don't think that story came through that well in the end. I just don't think it was very strong. It didn't really connect the dots. I mean, it did connect the dots, but not in order ever. It left it up to you to say, okay, this happened in this order, and then that happened, and then that's how the conclusion happened. It doesn't really come together in the end that well, but the journey is what counts in Obra Dinn. That's why it's number 4. Really, really enjoyable game. Very unique experience. Unique game. Unique looking, unique game mechanics. Lucas Pope made the game. He's an independent game developer. Shout out to Lucas Pope for making such a great game. Return to the Obra Dinn. Number 4. Let's move on to number 3, my top 3 of 2019. That's going to be Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. This is my favorite Star Wars game of all time. Let me just start by saying that. And I'm going to tell you why. The storytelling, right? I mean, I've been saying this for almost every game. The story is fantastic. The story is fantastic. This story is fantastic. It really is. The story of Cal Kestis, his journey from some nobody to somebody who can then face some of the fiercest villains that the Empire has to offer is astounding. But what I really love about this game is the exploration aspect. Going from world to world. The level design in this game is the best of the year. I have no problem saying that. It's the best level design of the year. I loved traversing the worlds. I loved the look of the worlds, first of all. The new ones and the already known ones. But traversing the world and the level design was outstanding. Swinging here, wall running there. I didn't love the swimming. Everybody hates swimming in video games. It's here. It's in Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. It's not a big deal. But, swinging, jumping, climbing, wall running, and using those traversal mechanics to get to secret areas that then loop around to the main path, and then all these side areas that have all these different rewards in them. It was incredibly satisfying to explore all of these worlds. Incredibly satisfying. To the point where I 100%ed the game. After I finished the story, I went back. The incredible story, by the way. I went back and I did everything else that the game had to offer. Everything. 100% of every world. Because I wanted to traverse the world more. I wanted to. But I will say, in going back through all the areas again to do all the collectibles and all the chests and 100% the areas, I did find some flaws in the level design where, once you swing on this vine, you can't swing back. So to go back that other way, you then have to go across half the map again. There are some instances like that kind of became more noticeable to me when I went back after finishing the story to 100% the game. There were a couple of those moments where there's no point of return. And there's no warning about that, so now you have to go back all the way around again to get back to where you came from. I wish those, I could have used an extra vine here or there in that regard. But overall, I didn't notice those things because when I played through the story, I was comfortable just going straight. I didn't veer off too much to do all these extra side stuff, and because I knew that I would be able to come back later and clean everything up, mop it up, as they say. So I was comfortable just like going through, staying on the path somewhat, veering off here or there, but I wasn't meticulously exploring back to get everything before moving on to the next story beat. And then there's the combat, which was outstanding. I mean, they call it the Dark Souls of Star Wars. I thought it was fantastic. Every strike of the lightsaber, you're just like, yeah, you care, you plan it out. It's meticulous. It's not nearly as punishing as, say, Sekiro or other From Software games. Not even close. It's very doable. It's not going to kick your ass. Maybe it will some points, but it's not that difficult, thankfully. I did play on the medium. I forgot what the difficulty settings are called, but I think the normal-ish kind of difficulty. But I hear, on the higher difficulties, it's not that much harder. I hear the enemies are a little bit more aggressive, but and then there are the boss battles, which I wish were replayable, because like Bloodstained Curse of the Moon last year, they had a boss rush mode where you could just play through all the bosses again in a row, back to back. I wish you could do that here, or have some kind of boss selection screen where you could just replay it, because these boss fights were jaw-dropping, especially the lightsaber duels. Oh my god. They were the coolest ever. These lightsaber battles in Jedi Fallen Order were some of the coolest sequences in video games that I've ever played in my life. Ever. They're so cool. And it's not like hack and slashy or it's so meticulous. And the sound design with the lightsabers when you switch it on and when the lightsabers clash is just mind-bogglingly cool. But yeah, and then there are some non-lightsaber boss battles too that are also really cool. There's a giant bat on Dathomir. I don't even know anymore. These boss battles were so cool. So cool. And there was such a great payoff to, like Kashyyyk. Kashyyyk wasn't my favorite planet to explore in the story. It was just like, okay, it's Kashyyyk, it's foresty, there's a million Star Wars forest planets, Endor, not Dathomir, Dagobah. It's just another forest planet. And then you get to the boss fight, and it immediately pays off, because that boss fight against the Ninth Sister, wow. And there are a lot of just badass Jedi moments in this game. It's incredible. Getting the double-bladed lightsaber, which I'm okay with spoiling because you're seeing it on screen now, was epic. Once you get that lightsaber, there are different places that you could get it. Where I got it, it was right before the Ninth Sister battle on Kashyyyk. So I got the double-bladed lightsaber, and I didn't even get to test it out against any other enemies. Because I got the lightsaber, walked 10 feet, and it was the boss battle. And so my first use with the double-bladed lightsaber was in that boss battle, and I felt immensely powerful. Even against such an intimidating foe such as the Ninth Sister with her double-bladed saber. I felt awesome. It felt so awesome to be a Jedi in this game. During so many moments, during so many battles, it was such an incredible experience. So many great set pieces. Your ship is awesome. Your crew, talking to your crew, Grease and Seer, they're really interesting and fun characters, especially Grease. They call him Greasy Money. But yeah, I mean, what else can I say about this game? It's nearly perfect. It is by far my favorite Star Wars game ever, of all time. I don't even know what else to say. Everything hit. The story, the level design, The combat, the boss battles, the music, the set pieces, everything about this game is amazing. I wanted to play as the second sister so bad. She's so badass. Look. I don't even look. Look at how cool she is. I want to play as her. Hopefully, maybe in DLC in the future or in the sequel. Because let's be honest, they put the colon after the Jedi. So this is the Star Wars Jedi series. You see what's going on here? So there's probably going to be more Star Wars Jedi games coming later on. So that's exciting, and hopefully one of them I could play as the second sister, because I really, really wanted to. But Cal is awesome too. And BD1. BD1 is awesome. Every character in this game is so awesome. And so is everything else about it. It was crazy. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, number 3 on my list. If you're a Star Wars fan in any capacity, please do yourself a favor and play Jedi Fallen Order. I know, scary EA. That's irrelevant. That is irrelevant. This is Respawn Entertainment speaking. Okay? And by the way, Respawn Entertainment made Apex Legends my number 6 game on this list. I don't think that's ever happened before, where one developer has 2 games on my list in a given year. Congratulations to Respawn on making 2 fantastic games, making arguably the best Star Wars game of all time. Thank you. But let's move on to my number 2 game of the year, and that's going to be Resident Evil 2. Now, I'm not a big fan of horror games at all. In fact, when it comes to it, I'm a little bitch. So I decided to play Resident Evil 2 because I saw that it wasn't going to be as scary as some of the other games that are out there, like Outlast or The Evil Within. It didn't seem that scary. It seemed tame compared to those games. And it's because of that I decided to give it a shot. I'm really glad that I did, because I enjoyed the hell out of it. I think this is the first horror game I might have ever played ever. Like the first true horror game. And I wound up absolutely loving it. Now I know that Resident Evil 2 is obviously, it's a remake, and I know that the original game wasn't over the shoulder third person. It was a fixed camera kind of deal. And before I played Resident Evil 2, I went back and I decided to play Resident Evil HD on Xbox One, because this is my first Resident Evil game I've ever played, really. So I wanted to start at the beginning of the series with the HD remaster, and that one has the fixed camera, obviously, and I hated it. I played up to a certain point, and then everything just got very overwhelming, and I just couldn't stand the fixed camera gameplay. So I stopped playing Resident Evil HD, but I was still set on playing Resident Evil 2. Yeah, that over-the-shoulder combat is really amazing. Part of the Resident Evil 2 game design is either shooting the zombies or running past them. What I love about this game is the atmosphere and how the entire police station is a giant puzzle. The puzzles aren't contained in like individual rooms. They span the entire police station. Right, you get an item in one area of the station, and you have to bring it to another room, and then you have to take the item that you get there and bring it somewhere else. It makes the whole police station seem like one giant puzzle, and that's very unique. So, and then there's the atmosphere too to add to it. The sound design, the visuals, roaming these dark, creepy hallways with rain flooding in from the outside through an open window, and I did enjoy the story. I liked the characters, and I really liked the kind of bleak tone that was brought to the table with a lot of the characters, especially the side characters that you meet. It all just makes it hopeless. I have a sense of hopelessness as I explore the police station, and then later on the sewers and the science lab. But I'll get to those areas a little bit later on. But when Mr. X came into play, He's known as the Tyrant, the giant man that follows you around. He's known as Mr. X in the community. I don't think that's his official name. It's just like a nickname that really stuck. But when he came into play, I played Leon's A run first. So Mr. X doesn't come in until like closer to halfway through the game. And by that point, I was already very comfortable exploring the police station at my own pace. I was taking my time in each room, making sure I didn't miss anything. I handled each zombie in an effective way. Like I either killed them and took my time with it, hit every shot, or I just ran past them. But, the point is, like, I was very comfortable in the police station despite that atmosphere and that sense of dread and hopelessness. Like, I was very comfortable in a horror game, which I was just, like, kind of surprised by, And then Mr. X came in and he just fucked all that up. And that in a very good way. That's not a bad thing. He came in and the whole game shifted entirely, because I was so used to just taking my time, I went at my own pace, and then Mr. X comes in and he doesn't allow you to do that anymore. He changed how I explored the police station, because as you can't kill him. He comes after you. You could shoot him a bunch and he'll get stunned for a couple seconds. But I never even bothered to do that because that's just a waste of ammunition. So I just tried to run away from him at all times, and it made it very difficult to move on with what I was trying to do in the police station, because I wasn't able to take my time anymore. I had to rush everything. I had to circle around areas to make sure I lost him. I had to, beeline to safe rooms, which is very handy knowing where the safe rooms are in that station, in case he gets on your tail. Just beeline for one, but it made doing the rest of my tasks very difficult now, because he's always following you. He's always around you. Those footstep sounds are just the worst. He made the game very, very scary for me. I actually contemplated stopping playing the game, but I decided to persist, and I'm glad I did, because moving on to the next gameplay section that doesn't have Mr. X is a huge weight off your shoulders. But yeah, he changed the way that I explore the police station, and I've never really seen a game kind of do that. A lot of games these days are cater to the player a lot. They allow the player to do whatever they want to do, however they want to do it. They don't make the player play in any specific fashion, in any type of pace. But Resident Evil 2 does make you change up how you play, because you can't just mosey around anymore once Mr. X comes in. When you make a sound, so you can't run without him coming after you. If you run, he'll find you and he'll chase after you almost immediately. So you have to walk slowly, yet you can't stay in one area for too long. It's that kind of dynamic where if you can't stay in this one room for too long, yet you can't run, so you have to walk slowly through it, and then you'll hear him coming in front of the door in the hallway, and then you have to hide or just hope that he passes by. It's really intense. It gets really, really intense. Yeah, Mr. X is just horrifying. And the thing is, so I did Leon's A run and then Claire's B run after that. And with Claire's run, he comes into play almost immediately. So you have to do everything with him there, and it's just chaos. But I mentioned the two different, Leon and Claire runs. I do have an issue with how some of the things that both characters do overlap. So for instance, Claire's B run is supposed to take place during Leon's A run, right? So it's supposed to be that Leon escapes the police station, right? And then Claire comes into the police station right after that and does her thing. But a lot of the things that they do, a lot of the objectives that Claire has to get done are already things that Leon did in the previous playthrough. So, like, for instance, the clock tower, right? Leon has to find the 2 gears and bring them to the clock tower and make the bell, I think the bell rings or whatever, but he does that whole clock tower puzzle. And then as Claire, later on, you come in supposedly after Leon has done that, and you have to do the same puzzle all over again that he just did. So there are some instances like that I discovered in Claire's second run that kind of took me out of it, I guess. Took me out of the story. So it's just like an inconsistency in continuity, I guess. Like having the same character do the same thing that the previous character did on the same timeline. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. And I wish that wasn't the case. Because, I mean, it wasn't a detriment to the game at all. I didn't really mind it, but it was super noticeable because I was just like, wait, I just did this as Leon, supposedly like a half hour ago in the game's timeline. That's just like a little nitpick I had with the storytelling from run to run. But yeah, and then you go from the police station to the sewer to the science lab, Umbrella Corps lab. I think it's the Umbrella Lab. It is, right? Yeah, and like once I got into the Umbrella Lab, I kind of took up, because each of those 3 environments that I just mentioned are so drastically different in terms of visuals. You know, you have the police station, which was once an art museum, so it's very, it has like this kind of nice, neat architecture to it. And while like being ravaged by this chaos that broke out, then you have the sewers, which are just grimy and disgusting. Then you have this clean as a whistle science lab that you finish the game at, you know. And looking back at the police station from the lab is just it made me think about the journey. I know it's a shorter game; it's like 7 or 8 hours. But it just made me think about the journey that my character just went on. It is such a journey, you know, because each location is so different. Thinking back to those rainy windows and the office desks with all the paper on it, and the dark hallways and the staircases and all that. Back to the police station from this crystal clear, like clean lab was just awesome. You know, it made me think about the timeline of the game and like made me really appreciate the different environments that the game has. And another thing I loved about this game is the inventory management. You know, I loved finding new items and combining items in my inventory, both to make space and to have a stronger version of those items. It's just, yeah, like finding ammo was super satisfying because, as we all know, you know, ammo in this game is super scarce. It's super hard to find, you know. But once you do find it, or once you can make your own ammo with gunpowder, it's super satisfying, you know. And I found myself fluctuating a lot between having a lot of resources and then not. Like I went from having tons of ammo, having like 30 bullets for my pistol and like 12 shotgun shells for my shotgun, and like I'd say like 3 healing items, to like 10 to 20 minutes later, I'm down to like 2 bullets, 1 shotgun shell, and no healing items. Like there was a nice fluctuation of my resources that I appreciated. That kept me on my toes with the resource management. And I loved how the resource management tied into the puzzles a lot, because for a lot of these puzzles you have to pick up and carry items with you, and for that you're going to have to clear up some inventory space a lot. So I love the dynamic between the inventory management and doing the puzzles. And I think overall I think Resident Evil 2 wasn't too scary for me at all. I think it was just the right amount of creepy. The atmosphere, I talked about the Sinking Cities atmosphere and how that really pulled me in. But Resident Evil 2, I can't. It's very hard for me to explain. Just like the audio design, the visuals, and just, oh my god, and all the footsteps, and hearing a zombie in the hallway next to you, like groaning and stuff. I love Resident Evil 2 so much. I love the gunplay. Well, not so much the gunplay, just the over-the-shoulder combat. Because I don't think I would have liked this game as much if it was still that fixed camera kind of thing. I don't think I would have liked it as much. I liked, going along with these characters through these dark hallways, Wow. Resident Evil 2 is just fantastic. All the environments, like I said, I love that police station. I love that you could still see the remnants of an art museum in it. The windows, everything about it. It's just amazing. But yeah, I love Resident Evil 2. And I'm super glad that I was able to give it a chance earlier on in the year when I was just thinking about it. I played the one-shot demo back last January when it came out. And I was sold with that. I was sold. Decided to play Resident Evil HD on my Xbox One. Just to catch up story-wise, just had to drop out from that because I was not enjoying it. But I was still I still want to play Resident Evil 2, and I'm glad that I did. And I'm glad that I stuck with it, facing Mr. X and thinking about quitting the game. I'm glad that I stuck with it. Fuck Mr. X. He sucks, but he's a really, really, really good game mechanic that switched up the gameplay for me effectively. It was fresh. I think I was really enjoying just having my own pace. But once Mr. X came in, it just kept everything fresh. It was like, okay, time to get your running shoes on, Leon. But yeah, I loved it. I remember when I played Claire's run. So I played Leon's run back in January, right when the game came out. Then after I finished his run, I decided to give it a break. And I think during the summer, I chose to do Claire's second run. And I remember having so much fun with Claire's run. I was actually giddy at while I was playing the game because I was enjoying it so much. I don't know why. I wasn't like that with Leon's run in January. But with Claire, I was just super excited to jump in every time that I loaded it up, and while I was playing, I was just filled with joy. I don't know how else to explain it. Such a fun game, such an immersively creepy game, with that great atmosphere. It switches things up, throws you curveballs, and it feels really satisfying to finish the game. I was really proud of myself when I finished the game, because I'd never played a horror game like that. I know it's very tame, but this is my first ever horror game, and I loved it so much. I was able to finish it, pull through during Mr. X's adversity. But that's Resident Evil 2, earned the second spot on my top 10 list of 2019. It's time to move on, though, to my number one game of the year, aka my game of the year. Drum roll, please. I'm just kidding. That's going to be Outer Wilds. That's right, Outer Wilds. Where do I even begin with this goddamn game? So first of all, this is the first ever indie game in my 5 years of doing these lists. First ever indie game to earn my game of the year. So congratulations, Mobius Digital and Annapurna. You guys blew it out of the water. Basically, and I'm gonna get into some kind of spoilery things here. I mean, I've spoiled a bunch of these games already on this list. Not so much in terms of story wise. I'm not gonna tell you the ending or whatnot. But a lot of how the game mechanics work. I'm gonna have to talk about this stuff. Okay, so basically, what happens is, you are a space explorer from Timber Hearth. So you are in the solar system. You're on this Earth-like planet called Timber Hearth, and you are part of a small community of alien species. So you're an alien. You're green and with the 4 eyes and whatever, and you're part of their space program. That's really all this community has, is their space program. And you lift off into space for the very first time, and you go exploring, and every 22 minutes, the sun in the solar system explodes into a supernova and kills you and everything else in the solar system. That happens every 22 minutes. So the first 22 minutes that you play, you'll get killed by the supernova. I actually don't think that's how it works, though. I think because there's like an introduction, you have to go and talk to a couple of the characters before you lift off into space first. And then I think once you lift off, the timer starts for 22 minutes. And then once you get killed by the supernova, it brings you back into waking up the beginning of the game. So it's a time loop. So you wake up at a campfire on your home planet, Timber Hearth. You launch into space, go exploring, sun explodes, wake up again at the campfire, get in your spaceship again, go exploring, sun explodes after 22 minutes again, wake up. So you keep waking up at the campfire every time either the sun explodes or every time you die while adventuring. And you can die in a lot of ways. That's the premise of the time loop, and your job is to kind of explore the solar system and figure out why the sun explodes and why there's a time loop that you're going through. And the game is... There are two adjectives that I have to describe this game. Fascinating and horrifying. Terrifying, actually. Because, yes, this game fascinates me. Space fascinated me pretty much my whole life, but once I played this game, my fascination for space grew to exponential levels. You know, months after I played Outer Wilds. I played Outer Wilds in June. Months after I finished the game, I've watched like YouTube video after YouTube video after YouTube video about space, black holes, anything about space. I was watching it for months after I finished this game because I was just so fascinated by the concept of space, thanks to Outer Wilds. You know, I went on this bender for months, I think until like October, November, when I finally stopped binging space videos on YouTube about black holes and whatnot. But it is also deeply terrifying at some point. Maybe even more terrifying than Resident Evil 2, I might say. Like it gave me this feeling of just like dread, like immense dread, immense like, oh my god, it was just... And it doesn't, if you look at a screenshot of this game, it wouldn't look scary at all. But to me, it was just, you know, some of the planets you visit, and I'll get to that, and some of the questions that it asks in its universe is just, you know, horrifying to me. So yeah, there's this time loop, and you have to go out and explore. The awesome thing about Outer Wilds is that it doesn't tell you what to do or how to do it. By the way, every time you die, either by supernova or death, adventuring, you have a log in your ship that keeps all everything that you learned. So you die, you wake up, and you have all the information that you just learned, saved up. So when you go discover something on a planet, it'll automatically save in your ship so that when you die, it'll be there forever for the rest of the game. So you don't lose that information progress. That saves every time. So you wake up, you have this information that you just got, now you could go. But yeah, the game does not tell you what to do. In the intro, your job is to go get your launch codes for your spaceship to take off for the first time. So all you have to do is go to the head of the space program. And along the way, there are some civilians in the town that you could talk to, and they'll give you maybe hints about one of the planets. So, you know, you'll get a hint of like, oh, on that planet, this happened one time, because like you're not the first space explorer in the program. There have been a history of space explorers before you in the program, and a number of them are still out there on the planets that you could go find and visit. But we'll get to that later. Yeah, so you go to the head of the space program, and on the way, you'll get like hints about this explorer on that planet found that thing one time, you should go check it out. Or this planet has something cool in it, you should go check that out. But you're never told like, hey, you know, step 1, go there, and then step 2, go there. No, it's just you get the codes, you come back to your ship, you blast off into space, and you do whatever you want. You can go anywhere at any point ever. So, you could check out some of those hints that you got about certain planets and finding explorers. But you could do anything in any order, and I love that about it. So yeah, there are a handful of small planets. These planets aren't ginormous, and I think that's a very, very good thing. They're not enormous, but they're super, super dense with interesting things to find and information and clues. Because this solar system is just a giant puzzle. It's a puzzle of information that you have to figure out. Much like in Resident Evil 2, the police station is a giant puzzle. Outer Wilds, the solar system is a giant puzzle, but instead of, finding items to unlock doors or whatever, it's all information based. It's all finding things out about the species that lived in your solar system before you. It's purely information based. There are some occasional physical puzzles, but yeah, it's all just for the most part information based. The solar system works on a timeline. But before I get to that, I think it'll be worth explaining some of the planets. So there are a handful of these small planets, densely packed, like I said. There's Giant's Deep, which is, first of all, about Giant's Deep, I have an intense fear of tornadoes, and I have an intense fear of the ocean. And what Giant's Deep is, it looks like a gas giant, but once you fly into the planet, you'll notice that it's just a planet covered in ocean, so with little small islands on it, but it's covered in ocean that you can drive your ship into and explore that, which I really hated because I hate ocean. But it also has a bunch of gigantic tornadoes flying around it. It's my worst nightmare in one planet, packaged in one planet. I hate that planet. I hate Giant's Deep. Fuck all of that shit. I hate tornadoes. This game immersed me so much. So flying into Giant's Deep every time was terrifying for me. And this tornadoes shoot you out into space. Some of them shoot you down into the water. They lift the islands up out of the water and throw those into space. It's chaos on this planet, and I hate it, but I also love it. But I also really, really hate it. Giant's Deep sucks, but I love it. I don't know how to explain that, but yeah, it's terrifying. And then there's Brittle Hollow, which is a planet that has a small black hole in the middle of it that sucks pieces of the planet in over time. There's Dark Bramble, which is difficult. I'm not even going to try to explain Dark Bramble. You could play the game and figure that one out on your own. There is the Ash Twins, which are two small planets closest to the sun that orbit each other as they orbit the sun. And how those work is one of these planets is filled with sand at the beginning of the time loop, and the other planet is empty. So what happens is, over the time loop, there's this giant stream of sand going from the sand planet to the empty planet. And over the 22 minutes, the empty planet is now filled with sand, and the one that started with all the sand is now empty. So over time, the sand transitions over to the second planet. And what's interesting about that is there are different areas or rooms that are only accessible on the sand planet once enough sand has filtered out onto the other planet. So you have to, and that happens with a lot of these planets, all of them actually. There's a comet where the ice melts as it gets closer to the sun in its orbit, and you have to wait for it to melt to be able to jump down into the comet to get to other areas inside of it. And if you miss that opportunity, you have to wait for it to orbit the sun again during the time loop. So there are these little windows of opportunity to get to different areas in the solar system that open up and close depending on what time it is in the time loop. And all these events that I'm talking about, the sand moving from one planet to the other, the ice melting on the comet, the black hole and when it sucks something in from the planet, all these events happen exactly the same at the exact same point in the 22-minute timeline. So it's not just like randomness. You never have to guess. Everything is measured out, and it happens at the same point, in the same way every timeline. So yeah, there's these little windows of opportunity, and that's why I called the solar system a giant puzzle, because you have to, if you want to get into a specific room, let's say like inside of the sand planet at the beginning of the loop, you can't. You have to wait until enough of that sand has filtered out onto the second planet to be able to now the doorway cleared up, so that now you could go into that room and explore it. Same thing like I just explained with the comet, where you have to wait for the ice to melt. There's something in this game that's part of the whole mystery called the quantum moon. Okay? And the thing about the quantum moon jumps from planet to planet based on where you're looking. It's this small moon that can only orbit one planet at a time, but it doesn't move, it doesn't fly to each planet. It, based on where you're looking, it like kind of appears and disappears. So let's say you're standing on your home planet and you're looking over at Giant's Deep, that ocean tornado planet that I just described. Fuck that planet, by the way. But you're looking over at Giant's Deep from Timber Hearth, which is your home planet, and you see the quantum moon orbiting Giant's Deep. If you look away from Giant's Deep and away from that moon, and you look back to Giant's Deep, the quantum moon is gone. And you could look somewhere else, look at a different planet, and it could be orbiting that planet. So it jumps to each planet based on where you're looking. And in that concept alone, a moon that jumps through space and time based on where you're looking, terrified the living F out of me like I wouldn't believe. And you have to land on that moon eventually. But if you try to fly through it, which you can if you keep it in your sights, it'll disappear. Like there's no surface. It's like it'll act like a ball of gas if you try and drive your ship to it and land on it without knowing how to do it properly. It's just that's as best as I could explain the quantum moon. It's creepy as hell. I don't know. I hate that idea. And seeing it, in Outer Wilds, like in full force, just like jumping from planet to planet based on where I was looking. Wow, like that scared the hell out of me. And, having to land on it later on in the game didn't help. That, and then a place that you go to later on in the game towards the very end, those two things, I'm not going to mention that second area, but those two, some people may know what I'm talking about, that other area that you get to that's related to this moon. It's just terrifying, between Giant's Deep, tornadoes, and oceans. Oh God, I just cringed. I just got the shivers. Just thinking about Giant's Deep. And then the quantum moon, and then that other place just freaked me the hell out. But I loved it. I loved how much this game freaked me out. Fascinating me at the same time. The solar system feels very tiny, and that's like I said before, they are small planets, but it feels tiny, and that's a very good thing, because if you're standing on Timber Hearth just after waking up at the campfire again after a loop, you could look up into the sky and you could see like all the planets. They're like an arm's reach away. Like that's the thing about it. It doesn't take long to fly to each planet either. It's such a small, compact solar system, and I love that about it. And you get this tool I think it's called the signal detector, where it reads sound waves from each planet. So you have it out and you could point it at a planet, and you could hear what sounds that planet is emitting. If you point at the quantum moon, it gives you this like fucking weird hum it's just the quantum moon sucks. It just sucks. Hearing it from with your signal detector to flying through it to actually landing on it later on just sucks. I hate it all. But in a very good way. When I say I hate something in this game, it's in a very, very like positive way. Okay, but yeah, you have the signal detector, and you could point at each planet, and you could hear. There's like I said before, there are space explorers from your program out on each planet that you could go find and talk to and visit, and they all play an instrument. And when you point your signal detector at a planet, you could hear that explorer playing their instrument. And what's interesting is if two planets line up, let's say Giant's Deep and Brittle Hollow lines up together, and you could catch both of them at the same time in your circle in your signal detector, you'll hear both instruments at once. And there's an achievement for getting the entire band in one, listening to the entire ensemble of the instruments in one like straight alignment. So yeah, like hearing that tune from each explorer and all those instruments, like kind of, it makes the solar system feel more like a lot more small, and that's such a great thing. It's such a great thing. Flying into the sun is also terrifying. There's a space station that orbits like really, really close to the sun. Like it's like part of the sun's surface almost, and you have to you can land on it. You can land on the space station. But there's a way to get to it that you don't have to, and that's the best way, because the sun is also terrifying in this game, and it's pretty easy to fly into it too. I'd be, trying to go around the sun to get to a planet that's on the other side of it, and I wouldn't realize how close to the sun I'm getting until I'm almost falling into it. It's terrifying. A lot of things about this game are to be. The thing with a 22-minute time loop is, you don't have to keep finding your ship. So let's say you blast off into space, like one does, and you decide to land on Giant's Deep. Let's say you land on one of the islands at Giant's Deep. You explore around a little bit. You could then, in that same time loop, because you'll have enough time, get back in your spaceship, fly out of Giant's Deep, and then go to a different planet and explore there, and then you could go from there, fly all the way to another planet and explore there. You could all do all of that in the same time loop, as long as you have your ship still with you, because it's very easy to lose it. It's very easy to have it, get out, and then it gets it just starts floating away, or it gets sucked into the sun. But the thing about that is a lot of these planets are very dense, like I said, and it's very easy to get lost on them too, even though they're so small. A lot of them are a lot bigger than others, but for example, Brittle Hollow is so big because you have the surface and then you have the underneath kind of surface, and I got lost on Brittle Hollow, and then I remember that, it doesn't matter, I don't ever have to find my ship again, because a lot of the time when I land on Brittle Hollow, my ship would get sucked into the black hole when I was out exploring the planet, and I'd be like, well, I guess I'm not going to any other planet again, in this loop, because, you can't really get to your ship then. Unless you, go after it and dive into the black hole, you'll end up, on somewhere else in the solar system. Because that's how black holes work. They don't work like real ones do, I guess. You dive into the black hole, which, by the way, the black hole and white holes in this game, also terrifying. But yeah, if you go into the black hole, you'll pop out at the white hole. Apparently, according to science, white holes are the opposite of black holes, and that you can't go into the white hole. It's impossible to go through. So the black hole and white hole acts as a tunnel in a way, where you jump into the black hole, come out of the white hole, and there's a white hole station that you could explore too. Even if my ship was fine, I wouldn't. I'd get lost exploring. I know that because the sun is about to explode, I don't need to worry about finding my ship again ever. Even if I know where I left it and it's still there, I wouldn't need to worry about the ship ever again, because I know that the sun will take care of things and put me back at the campfire again, where I could start the loop again. And I loved finding a vital piece of information on a planet, getting wiped out by the sun, and getting back into my spaceship and going right back there again with that information that I found to dive even deeper to that area. Yeah, Outer Wilds was just such a joy to play. Such a joy. Like I said, the first ever indie game to earn my Game of the Year, and it's very, very well earned. I talked about all these other games on my list. All these AAA, Star Wars, Resident Evil, Gears, Outer Worlds, all these huge AAA games, a bunch of Game Awards, Game of the Year contenders on this list. But Outer Wilds just took the cake for me. It scared the shit out of me when I wasn't expecting it to. It fascinated the hell out of me. It told a story that was, I don't even know how to describe the story. The story is also fascinating. And the story isn't really, the story is told in the clues and the information that you pick up on your ship log. Really, that's how the story is told, because there's no character that's telling you things. You could talk to these characters, you could talk to the adventurers on these planets, the ones that play the instruments. You could talk to them and they'll tell you a couple things. They'll give you clues about where to look sometimes. And you could talk to the people on your home planet. But the story is told through the information that you gather about that species called the Nomai that lived, I think I mentioned this earlier, that lived in the solar system before you. And they got, I won't go into it. But the story is told through the ship logs and all the information that you gather about the solar system and that species and what they did and how they did it. That's where the story is told, and I think that's such a unique way to tell a story. Just through this puzzle-like solar system, just getting lost on planets. Such a unique way to tell a story, and then it all comes together in the end. What an experience! Out of any game on this list, out of any game that I talked about in this video so far, the one that I could recommend to anybody at all, even non-gamers, people who aren't even interested in space, or it doesn't matter. The game out of this list that I'd recommend to anybody is Outer Wilds. And I'm sitting here and I ran out of words to say. I can't. I'm having trouble fathoming how much I loved Outer Wilds. It's a special game to me. So definitely, absolutely deserved my number one spot. When I made this list, I put it at the top immediately, and I didn't really give it much other thought outside of that. Resident Evil 2 was the closest game, in my opinion, that could give it a run for its money. But, Outer Wilds, I never even thought about putting it anywhere else on this list. So, congratulations to Mobius Digital for making such an incredible game, and congratulations to all these developers: Capcom, Respawn Entertainment, Twice, Lucas Pope, The Coalition, Frogwares, Obsidian Entertainment, Asobo, and Remedy for making my top 10 favorite games of the year. So that's the video. That's my list. Thank you for watching and listening to me gush about my favorite games of 2019. I hope you enjoyed it, but until next time, goodbye.